The faint, acrid signature of ammonium nitrate, a scent Jack Donovan associated with the ugliest facets of human ingenuity, pricked at his nostrils. The instant Principal Helen Miller, her face a mask of burgeoning terror, pushed open the janitor's closet door. Outside, the bright, hopeful sounds of a Tuesday morning were just beginning to animate the Harmony Center, a haven meticulously designed for children navigating profound learning and physical disabilities. The distant rumble of the first school bus, the cheerful cadence of early arriving staff, painted a stark, cruel contrast to the scene unfolding in this cramped, shadowed space. There, nestled with a horrifying casualness, behind a row of institutional bleach bottles and floor wax, sat a length of dull gray galvanized pipe, both ends securely capped. Affixed to its surface with duct tape was a small, cheap digital kitchen timer, its red LED display frozen at 02:17:43. Beside this harbinger of chaos lay a piece of cheap notebook paper, the message scrawled in an aggressive, spiky hand. Oak Haven, Holand. Trespassers will be prosecuted to the fullest extent. This is your final warning. P.E. Donovan, chief federal bomb investigator for the FBI's tri-state region, felt the familiar ice-cold clench deep in his abdomen, a physiological precursor to the hyper-focused state his profession demanded. He was ostensibly at the Harmony Center for a low-profile security consultation, part of a proactive initiative he'd championed to assess and harden potential soft targets, schools, community centers, places where innocents gathered. He'd reviewed the school's blueprints, walked the grounds with Principal Miller the previous afternoon, discussed evacuation routes and access control. He hadn't anticipated this, a live, hostile device already counting down. To target the Harmony Center, to deliberately bring such calculated malevolence to children whose daily existence was a testament to courage against overwhelming odds, was an act that scraped the very bottom of human depravity. Helen. Donovan said, his voice a deliberate island of calm in the suddenly turbulent air, a stark contrast to the frantic alarm bells clanging in his own mind. I need you to initiate a full building evacuation. Now, use your standard fire drill procedure. Emphasize order, no panic. Get every student, every staff member to your primary assembly point at the far end of the athletic field. Once that's underway, call 911. Tell them you have a code red situation, a potential improvised explosive device. Inform them that FBI Special Agent Jack Donovan is on site and has taken command of the scene. His eyes briefly met hers, conveying an urgency that brooked no argument. Principal Miller, a woman whose gentle demeanor and kind eyes usually radiated an almost maternal warmth, now looked as if she'd seen a ghost. Her skin was stretched taut and pale over her cheekbones, her pupils dilated with a primal fear that resonated with Donovan, though his was sheathed in layers of training and grim experience. A bomb. She stammered the words, catching in her throat, her hand instinctively flying to her lips. Here at Harmony, the children. Oh dear God, my children. We will manage the device. Helen. Donovan stated, his tone firm but reassuring. Your absolute priority is the safety of your students and staff. Move, now. He watched her nod, a quick, jerky affirmation of comprehension, then turn and hurry from the closet, her footsteps echoing too loudly in the sudden silence. Moments later, her voice, unnaturally high-pitched, yet impressively controlled, crackled over the school's intercom system, announcing an immediate evacuation drill. Donovan was already speaking into his encrypted radio, his call sign crisp, his words precise, activating the well-oiled machinery of federal response. Pathfinder, this is Donovan. I have a confirmed IED, probable multiple devices, located at the Harmony Center, 1200 Elm Street, City of Oak Haven. Hostile intent appears targeted at the school facility. Perpetrator note indicates HOA dispute, likely subject Patricia Evans, President Oak Haven Homeowners Association. Initiate immediate lockdown of the surrounding 6-block radius. I require full EOD Level 1 response. My primary team, Atlas Squad, rolling code 3. Expedite. Notify local PD Fire EMS. Establish interagency command post on my location. His life before this moment, before this school, before this crudely fashioned instrument of death, was a carefully constructed fortress against chaos. Days were a relentless cycle of threat assessments, The grim archaeology of post-blast crime scenes, training simulations designed to mimic the brutal reality of explosive detonations, and the labyrinthine bureaucracy that was the inescapable companion to federal law enforcement. He had witnessed the grotesque inventiveness of the human mind when bent on destruction, from simple but deadly pipe bombs favored by lone wolves to sophisticated remotely triggered devices employed by organized terror cells. Each incident, each mangled piece of evidence, each life irrevocably altered or extinguished had etched another fine line onto the map of his soul, a deepening comprehension of the profound darkness some individuals willingly embraced. He lived a Spartan existence in a small anonymous apartment, his personal life a barren landscape deliberately kept clear of entanglements, his work a jealous mistress demanding absolute fealty. He'd chosen this path, this relentless confrontation with the agents of explosive violence after an IED on a dusty road outside Kandahar had vaporized his best friend, a young Marine full of laughter and impossible dreams, during Donovan's own brief formative stint in the military. He had sworn an oath, then a silent personal vow, to dedicate his life to fighting this specific, cowardly brand of terror. The Harmony Center, with its brightly colored murals depicting smiling animals, its rows of tiny, specially adapted wheelchairs, its pervasive atmosphere of gentle patient care, should have been a sanctuary, a place inviolable to such calculated hatred. Clearly, he had allowed himself a moment of dangerous naivete. Patricia Evans, current and long-standing president of the Oakhaven Estates Homeowners Association, whose pristine high-value properties bordered the Harmony Center's modest grounds, was a name that had already surfaced with unsettling frequency during Donovan's preliminary security review. The HOA, an exclusive enclave of sprawling homes, perfectly manicured emerald lawns, and an almost suffocating air of self-importance, had been embroiled in an increasingly acrimonious and public dispute with the school for well over a year. The flashpoint initially had been a seemingly trivial matter, a disputed fence line, a narrow sun-dappled strip of land, perhaps 10 feet wide and 50 feet long, which the school utilized as a vital sensory garden for its students, a place of textures, scents, and gentle sounds, crucial for their development. Evans, a retired civil engineer in her late 60s, possessed of a formidable intellect, an unyielding adherence to rules, however arbitrary, and a notoriously volcanic temper when her authority was challenged, had passionately spearheaded the HOA's legal crusade to reclaim this contested sliver of land. She had penned vitriolic letters to the editor of the local newspaper, her prose dripping with contempt for the school's entitled administration. She had publicly harangued school board members at town hall meetings, her voice shrill with indignation. And according to Principal Miller, during their initial consultation, Evans had recently taken to parking her late-model silver Mercedes across the street from the school during morning drop-off and afternoon pickup, simply sitting and watching her stony presence, a palpable weight of unspoken animosity. Miller had used words like obsessed, fixated, and increasingly unhinged to describe Evans's demeanor regarding the ongoing legal battle, a battle which, by all credible accounts and legal opinions, the HOA was decisively losing. The initials PE on the note felt like a deliberate, arrogant signature. The inciting incident, the janitor's horrifying discovery of that first crude but undeniably viable bomb, had irrevocably shattered the morning's fragile, hopeful peace. Mr. Henderson, the school's elderly, kind-faced janitor, a man who knew every child's name and often slipped them a piece of hard candy, had been starting his usual rounds. He'd noticed the closet door slightly ajar, a detail that snagged his attention because he was meticulous about security. He'd smelled something funny, he'd later tell Donovan, like bad fertilizer in old pennies. Then, he'd seen the pipe. His blood had run cold. He'd set an old soldier's instinct screaming danger. He'd immediately found Principal Miller. As the last of the children, a small bewildered army, many in specialized wheelchairs, some with visible fear in their wide eyes, others blissfully unaware of the true danger, were carefully and bravely guided out by their frantic but admirably composed teachers. Donovan's team, Atlas Squad, arrived. Their convoy of specialized vehicles, led by the imposing Mobile Command Center and Bomb Disposal Unit, known affectionately as the Beast, sliced through the nascent morning traffic sirens blaring a path. He met his lead EOD technician, Mark Jenkins, at the hastily established outer perimeter. Jenkins was a man whose zen-like calm under unimaginable pressure was the stuff of bureau legend, a wiry, unassuming figure who possessed the delicate touch of a surgeon and the steely nerves of a test pilot. "All right, Mark," Donovan began, his voice low and intense. "First device is a classic pipe bomb, galvanized steel double-capped. Preliminary olfactory suggests ammonium nitrate base, possibly with a fuel oil accelerant. Simple kitchen timer mechanical, currently showing just under 2 hours. Perpetrator note indicates an ongoing HOA dispute. Prime suspect is Patricia Evans, Oak Haven HOA president. Background check confirms a degree in civil engineering from a top university, 30 years, with a major construction firm, retired as a senior project manager. She supervised projects involving controlled demolitions early in her career. Assume high competency in construction, assume she knows enough to make this thing effective, and absolutely assume there are more. This feels personal, targeted, and potentially escalating. Jenkins, his face already set in lines of intense concentration, absorbed the information with a series of curt nods. "Understood, Jack. We'll start with a portable X-ray unit for confirmation of internal components. Full sweep protocol for the entire facility, and immediate grounds will commence once the primary device is assessed. Robot first, always." While Jenkins and Atlas Squad, now encased in the cumbersome but life-saving heavy bomb suits, began the slow, deliberate, and infinitely dangerous process of approaching and assessing the first device, Donovan worked with the rapidly arriving local police units to expand and secure the perimeter. He ordered the evacuation of homes and businesses within a 3-block radius, creating a sterile zone. News crews like vultures, sensing a kill, were already arriving, their vans bristling with antennas, their reporters hungry for sound bites. Donovan assigned a press liaison to manage them, to feed them carefully vetted information, to keep them from compromising the operation or causing further panic. It was then, as he scanned the growing crowd of onlookers, being held back by a newly erected police barricade, that he saw her. Patricia Evans. She stood slightly apart from a small, anxious cluster of Oak Haven residents, her arms crossed tightly against her chest. Her expression, an unreadable, chilling amalgam of grim satisfaction, feigned civic concern, and something that looked unnervingly like triumph. She even had the colossal audacity to approach a uniformed police officer at the barricade, her voice carrying clearly in a momentary lull. "Officer," she inquired, her tone dripping with mock solicitude, "is it a gas leak? Something to do with the school's notoriously faulty wiring? Perhaps I've always maintained their maintenance standards were dangerously subpar. It's a menace to our property values, you know." The casual, almost bored inflection in her voice, the proprietary, almost predatory gleam in her eyes as they flicked dismissively towards the school, sent a fresh rivulet of ice water down Donovan's spine. This wasn't merely about a disputed strip of land. This was about a deeply ingrained pathological need for control, a malignant desire to punish, to obliterate any person or institution that dared to defy her will. The first phase of the meticulously planned, yet terrifyingly unpredictable rising action was the tense, agonizingly slow process of dealing with that initial explosive device. The small red numbers on the kitchen timer continued their remorseless countdown. 2 hours, 17 minutes when discovered, now considerably less. Enough time, had it not been found for a full school day, to be well underway for the halls and classrooms of the Harmony Center to be filled with its uniquely vulnerable population. The bomber's intent was brutally, chillingly clear mass casualty inflicted upon the most defenseless of victims. Jenkins, using a sophisticated remotely operated robotic platform equipped with multiple cameras and manipulators, managed to obtain a clear series of X-ray images of the pipe bomb. The internal view confirmed Donovan's initial assessment, a simple but brutally effective design, the pipe packed densely with the explosive mixture, a small battery powering the timer, and a non-electric blasting cap. No obvious anti-tamper mechanisms, no secondary triggers I can identify on this primary device. Jack, Jenkins' voice, slightly distorted by the suit's internal microphone, crackled over Donovan's secure radio link. "But it's definitely viable, fully armed. Timer's a cheap mechanical one, but it's functioning. There's a secondary pressure release switch, very rudimentary, built into the threads of the far end cap. If we attempt to move it manually without disabling that pressure switch first..." He didn't need to elaborate. The consequences were unthinkable. "Understood, Mark." Donovan replied, his eyes glued to the live video feed from the robot's camera, displayed on a hardened laptop in the mobile command post. "Standard procedure. Water jet disruptor it is. Target the timer circuit first, then the end cap assembly containing the pressure switch. Minimize collateral, maximize neutralization. He watched his breath held as the robot, guided by Jenkins's expert hand, carefully maneuvered its high-pressure water jet disruptor into position. The sharp, percussive crack of the disruptor firing a sound Donovan knew intimately echoed across the unnervingly silent, evacuated school grounds. A beat of silence, then Jenkins's voice tinged with relief. Device neutralized, Jack. Timer mechanism is shattered. Main explosive charge did not detonate. Pressure switch dislodged and disabled. We got lucky with that rudimentary trigger design. A more sophisticated one would have been problematic. The collective audible exhalation of breath from the assembled law enforcement and emergency personnel in the command post was a testament to the immense tension that had gripped them. But Donovan knew with a chilling certainty that this was far from over. This was merely the opening act. Good work, Atlas, but don't relax yet. Full sweep of the entire facility roof to crawl space. He ordered, his voice regaining its hard edge. She knows this school. She's been watching it. She knows where to hide things. I want every classroom, every office, every closet, every maintenance access point, every ventilation shaft checked and double-checked. Assume nothing is safe. The second, far more shocking event of the rising action materialized less than an hour later, validating Donovan's grim premonition. Jack, you need to get to the therapy wing hydrotherapy room. Now. Sarah Chen, one of Atlas Squad's newer but exceptionally sharp technicians, called urgently over the radio, her voice tight with alarm. The therapy wing, Donovan knew from his earlier walkthrough with Principal Miller, was the heart of the Harmony Center. It housed a large heated hydrotherapy pool, several state-of-the-art sensory rooms filled with specialized lighting and tactile equipment, and custom-designed apparatus for children with severe mobility impairments. It was a place of healing, of small miracles. Chen was standing in the humid, chlorine-scented air of the hydrotherapy room, pointing a gloved finger towards a large, removable access panel set into the tiled wall beneath one of the padded therapy mats that lined the pool's edge. Behind the panel, tucked with malevolent precision against a dense cluster of insulated pipes that Donovan recognized instantly as part of the building's main natural gas line, was a second device. This one was markedly different, far more sophisticated, and infinitely more terrifying than the first. It wasn't a simple pipe bomb. It was a complex array of linked chemical containers, industrial-sized plastic jugs filled with volatile liquids, their labels ominously obscured by black tape. A more intricate electronic timer, clearly of higher quality than the first, was wired into the assembly along with what looked alarmingly like a small discrete remote radio frequency receiver. This wasn't fabricated by a rank amateur. Jack, Chen said, her voice low, and strained her usual composure, visibly shaken. This is designed for maximum incendiary effect of fuel-air explosions strategically placed directly adjacent to the primary gas main. If this device functions as intended, it takes out this entire wing, probably compromises the structural integrity of the whole school. The gas line rupture alone would be catastrophic. The timer on this second, far more lethal device read 01, row 4, 22. Closer, much, much closer. And the unmistakable presence of a remote receiver meant the bomber Patricia Evans could potentially trigger it at will from a distance, regardless of the timer's countdown. The deadly game had just escalated exponentially. This wasn't merely about making a political statement or exacting petty revenge for a lost property dispute. This was a meticulously planned kill mission. Patricia Evans wasn't just an embittered, obsessive HOA president. She was a calculating, resourceful, and utterly ruthless domestic terrorist. The parallel investigation into Patricia Evans, running concurrently with the EOD operations, now kicked into overdrive. While Donovan and his Atlas Squad confronted the daunting task of neutralizing the second, more complex incendiary device, teams of FBI agents and local police detectives descended upon the Oak Haven estates, transforming its tranquil, tree-lined streets into a hub of urgent law enforcement activity. Neighbors, initially hesitant and clearly intimidated by Evans's long-standing reputation, began to open up their fear of her, now eclipsed by the horrifying reality of her actions. They painted a disturbing portrait of a woman increasingly consumed by her grievances, her behavior growing more erratic and paranoid over the preceding months. She had reportedly been seen receiving a series of unusual late-night deliveries, large unmarked plastic drums containing unknown chemicals, which she had curtly explained away to curious neighbors as specialized fertilizers and soil conditioners for unspecified, extensive landscaping projects, though no such projects ever materialized on her immaculate but conventionally planted property. She had systematically converted her spacious three-car garage into what appeared to be a private workshop, the sounds of power tools, hammering, and occasional small, sharp chemical smells emanating from it at all hours of the day and night. One particularly observant neighbor, a retired chemistry teacher, recalled Evans making a chillingly prescient statement at a recent tense HOA barbecue held just days before. Following a heated exchange about the ongoing school lawsuit, Evans had reportedly said her voice low and venomous. Some people, some institutions only understand drastic, unequivocal measures. Oakhaven Estates will be respected. Our property rights, our community integrity will be honored, one way or another. Mark my words. A federal search warrant for Patricia Evans's large colonial-style house was obtained with emergency speed. What the entry team discovered inside confirmed Donovan's most dreadful suspicions. The garage was not merely a workshop. It was a fully equipped, if disturbingly crude, bomb factory. Detailed hand-drawn blueprints and schematics for the explosive devices found at the Harmony Center were spread across a large workbench. Printed recipes for various volatile, explosive, and incendiary compounds, apparently downloaded from obscure corners of the internet, were found on her home computer's hard drive, alongside a history of extensive research into timers, remote detonation systems, and the structural vulnerabilities of commercial buildings. Purchase records meticulously filed showed she had recently acquired through various online vendors and local hardware stores significant quantities of timers, wiring pipes, end caps batteries, and large volumes of precursor chemicals, ammonium nitrate fertilizers, gallons of fuel oil solvents, industrial strength acids, metallic powders, all chillingly consistent with the components of the devices already discovered and the additional materials littering her workspace. She even possessed recent covertly taken surveillance photographs of the Harmony Center, some clearly taken from her car across the street, with handwritten annotations marking potential entry points, security camera blind spots, and structural vulnerabilities like the gas main access, and Patricia Evans herself. She was gone. Her silver Mercedes was missing from the garage, her purse, her cell phone, her laptop, all gone. She had vanished, transforming from a local menace into a fugitive, a highly dangerous and mobile bomber on the loose, while a live, sophisticated incendiary device was still ticking ominously beneath a school filled with the ghosts of terrified children. The midpoint twist, the moment the situation spiraled from a localized crisis into a potential national nightmare, arrived with a sickening, stomach-churning lurch. As Mark Jenkins and Sarah Chen, their movements, a symphony of focused precision and almost unbearable tension, carefully worked to diagnose and disable the second, highly volatile, incendiary device. They discovered something else, something that changed everything. Tucked into a small, waterproof pouch, integrated into the device's complex casing, almost as an afterthought or a deliberate taunt, was a small, black, encrypted USB flash drive. And crudely etched into the drive's cheap plastic casing were two chilling words: Phase 2. Get that drive to our cyber forensics unit Priority 1. Donovan barked into his radio, his mind reeling from the implications. I want it decrypted yesterday, full spectrum analysis, Phase 2. The words hung in the air of the command post like a toxic miasma. More. It clearly meant more devices, different, perhaps even more vulnerable targets, a wider, more ambitious campaign of terror. While Atlas Squad continued their perilous, delicate dance with death in the therapy wing, the Bureau's cyber forensics unit working with astonishing speed threw every resource they had at the encrypted drive. Within 30 agonizing minutes, they had broken the encryption. The contents of the USB drive were a digital roadmap to Patricia Evans's escalating madness and her terrifyingly ambitious plans. It contained meticulously detailed schematics for 3 additional explosive devices, each similar in design and destructive potential to the one currently being disarmed in the therapy wing. More horrifyingly, it included a list of names, not just Principal Helen Miller, but also the individual school board members who had consistently voted against the HOA in the ongoing land dispute, the lead attorney representing the school in the civil litigation, even a local investigative journalist who had penned a series of articles critical of Patricia Evans's increasingly aggressive tactics and rhetoric. Beside each name on this digital hit list were home addresses, workplace addresses, vehicle descriptions, and disturbingly accurate hand-typed notes on their daily routines, their comings and goings. But there was more, much more. The drive also held a series of date-stamped video files, a personal manifesto delivered by Patricia Evans herself. Seated in her garage workshop, her face a mask of contorted rage and righteous fury, her voice a venomous, trembling torrent of perceived injustices, she railed against the corrupt system, the arrogant fools who had stolen Oak Haven's sacred land, and her sworn duty to make them pay for their hubris, to purify Oak Haven from the encroaching rot. She explicitly stated that the Harmony Center was merely the beginning, a symbolic cleansing fire, a necessary demonstration of her resolve. She chillingly referred to secondary protocols and contingency targets that would be activated if her initial demonstration of Oak Haven's righteous anger was interfered with or, in her twisted logic, misunderstood. The true horrifying twist wasn't just the existence of a future target list or the unhinged manifesto. It was the stark, unavoidable realization that they were dealing with a premeditated, multi-stage terrorist plot orchestrated by a highly motivated, technically proficient, and dangerously detached individual. Evans's home, when subjected to a more thorough, painstaking secondary search by a fresh EOD team, revealed the full extent of her paranoia and her deadly intent. It wasn't just a workshop, it was a fortress. They found evidence of multiple booby traps, a sophisticated pressure plate trigger mechanism hidden beneath a rug in her living room, wired to a small but potent explosive charge, a tripwire across the basement stairs, even a mercury switch tilt fuse on her primary circuit breaker box designed to detonate if disturbed. Thankfully, the initial FBI entry team, operating with extreme caution, had detected and disarmed these threats before they could be triggered. This woman wasn't just lashing out in a moment of rage. She had a strategic, albeit profoundly insane vision of terror vengeance and what she perceived as righteous retribution. The threat had metastasized, spreading its tendrils far beyond the vulnerable walls of the Harmony Center. Patricia Evans was no longer just a local problem, a Karen with a grudge. She was an active mobile, an exceptionally dangerous domestic terrorist, a clear and present threat to national security. The climax of this unfolding nightmare played out over the next 12 nerve-shredding hours. With the second highly volatile device at the school finally miraculously rendered safe by Jenkins and Chen, it had been a mere 20 minutes from its programmed detonation when they cut the final wire. The full formidable weight of federal and local law enforcement was now engaged in a desperate multi-jurisdictional manhunt for Patricia Evans. Simultaneously, a frantic systematic search was underway for any other potential explosive devices linked to her horrifying Phase 2 contingency plans. The individuals named on her target list were immediately contacted, urgently advised of the credible and specific threat against them, and provided with round-the-clock protective details. Their homes, their offices, their vehicles were meticulously swept for IEDs by EOD teams pulled in from neighboring states. The media, initially held back by the operational sensitivity, was now fully engaged. Patricia Evans's stern, unsmiling face, plastered across every television screen, her silver Mercedes license plate and description broadcast on a continuous loop. The entire region, from the bustling city center to the quietest suburban cul-de-sacs, was on edge, gripped by a palpable fear. Intelligence analysts from the FBI's Behavioral Analysis Unit and Counterterrorism Division, sifting through the digital entrails of Evans's life, her financial records, her recovered emails, her recently abandoned social media profiles, her vehicle's GPS history, unearthed a crucial lead. She owned, through a defunct shell corporation established by her late husband, a small dilapidated commercial property on the gritty industrial outskirts of the city. It was the former site of Oak Haven Dry Cleaners, a business that had failed decades ago. The building was isolated, set back from a rarely used service road, largely forgotten by the city, and most importantly, possessed its own independent power supply and was miles from any residential areas. It was a perfect anonymous bolt hole, a potential new workshop for her deadly craft, or worse, a heavily fortified staging ground for her next wave of attacks. Donovan, his face etched with exhaustion, but his eyes burning with an unwavering resolve, personally led the tactical assault team. The FBI's elite hostage rescue team, HRT, diverted from a critical training exercise in Quantico, had been flown in on a military transport. This wasn't going to be a gentle negotiation, a patient coaxing into surrender. Evans was too far gone, too deeply entrenched in her paranoid delusions for that. This was a high-risk emergency apprehension, fraught with the ever-present danger that she might have more devices primed a remote trigger in her hand, or even a dead man's switch wired to her person. The target property was a grim, low-slung brick building, its windows long ago boarded over with faded plywood, a rusted paint-peeled Oakhaven dry cleaner sign creaking mournfully in the evening breeze. High-tech thermal imaging from an aerial surveillance drone showed one distinct heat signature inside Mobile Active. Patricia Evans was home. Under the cloak of a moonless, starless night, the HRT operators' phantoms in their dark tactical gear established a silent, concentric perimeter around the derelict building. Donovan, situated in a heavily armored tactical command vehicle, positioned a safe distance away but with direct line of sight, gave the go-ahead for the breach. No sirens, no bullhorns, no announcements that might give Evans time to react or trigger a contingency. Swift, silent, overwhelming force. They breached the reinforced rear steel door with a precisely calculated explosive charge, the sudden sharp boom shockingly loud in the oppressive stillness of the deserted industrial park, followed instantly by the disciplined, deafening shouts of "FBI freeze, show us your hands down on the ground." Chaos erupted from within. Evans, as they had grimly anticipated, had no intention of surrendering peacefully. She was discovered in a large, cavernous back room, a veritable rat's nest of tangled wires, open chemical containers, soldering irons, power tools, and several half-assembled explosive devices, even more sophisticated than those found at the school. When the HRT breachers stormed into the room, their high-intensity weapon lights cutting through the dim, dusty interior, Evans, a wild, feral look in her eyes, shrieked an incoherent curse and lunged not for a weapon, but for a crude, oversized red button mounted on a jury-rigged control panel bristling with wires that snaked towards the building's basement. An HRT sniper positioned with a clear view through a grimy, broken window pane had been given explicit rules of engagement if the target made any overt action that could reasonably be interpreted as attempting to detonate a device posing an imminent threat to life. Lethal force was authorized. The distinctive sharp crack of the .308 caliber precision rifle was almost simultaneous with the HRT operator's final rush towards Evans. She crumpled to the dusty concrete floor, her outstretched hand inches from the ominous red button, a dark, rapidly blossoming stain spreading across her shoulder. She was alive, but critically wounded and incapacitated. The red button Donovan and his team would later discover with a collective shudder was hardwired to a series of powerful, daisy-chained incendiary devices strategically placed throughout the building's crumbling basement, meticulously designed to obliterate the entire structure and everyone in it in a massive fuel-air explosion. Patricia Evans had fully intended to take all evidence of her crimes and a significant number of federal agents with her in a final, defiant act of suicidal nihilism. In the tense, demanding falling action that commenced immediately following Evans' capture and the securing of the dry cleaning plant, the absolute priority was the systematic rendering safe of her workshop of horrors. Specialized EOD teams from 3 neighboring states working under Donovan's direct oversight converged on the hazardous site. The process was painstaking, incredibly dangerous, and took nearly 36 continuous nerve-wracking hours. They located and successfully neutralized 4 more completed IEDs, each displaying a disturbing progression in sophistication and destructive capability, along with enough precursor chemicals, blasting caps, and raw materials to construct at least a dozen more such devices. Patricia Evans, recovering under heavily armed guard in a secure wing of the county hospital and later transferred to a maximum security federal detention facility, remained largely uncooperative and chillingly defiant, alternating between periods of stony silence and venomous, disconnected ramblings about her infringed property rights, the conspiracy against her, and what she perceived as her divine retribution against a corrupt society. However, the wealth of intelligence gleaned from her booby-trapped workshop, her detailed notes, and her eventual grudgingly given and largely self-serving interrogation responses allowed law enforcement authorities to proactively identify, locate, and thoroughly sweep all individuals and locations that had appeared on her Phase 2 target list. Miraculously, no further active devices were found planted in the community. It appeared her capture had come just before she could fully execute the next, even more deadly stage of her meticulously insane plan. The Harmony Center remained closed for nearly 2 weeks, while multiple exhaustive EOD sweeps were conducted by different teams to ensure no stone was left unturned. Environmental remediation crews then moved in to thoroughly decontaminate the building of any lingering chemical traces from the devices. When its doors finally reopened, it was to an overwhelming, heartwarming outpouring of community support. Parents, teachers, local business owners, and scores of ordinary volunteers descended upon the school not with fear or trepidation, but with a powerful, shared determination to heal and rebuild. They repainted walls scarred by the investigation, planted vibrant new flowers and shrubs in the now permanently secured sensory garden, and organized numerous fundraisers to cover the costs of enhanced security measures and trauma counseling for the affected children and staff. The emotional trauma was undeniable, especially for the young students who had been forced to evacuate their safe haven under such terrifying circumstances, and for the dedicated staff members who had bravely faced the direct threat to their lives and the lives of their charges. Specialized counseling services, grief therapists, and child psychologists were brought in, and the school, with remarkable resilience, began the slow, difficult process of healing, of reclaiming its identity as a sanctuary of learning, growth, and joy. Patricia Evans faced a daunting battery of federal charges, including the use of a weapon of mass destruction, attempted murder of federal officers for the booby-trapped workshop, and her final desperate lunge for the detonator, and multiple counts of domestic terrorism. The trial, held in a high-security federal courthouse, was swift, lasting less than a week. The evidence against her, meticulously assembled by Donovan and his team, was irrefutable and overwhelming. Her own hate-filled video manifesto, the tons of bomb-making materials seized from her home and workshop, the complex explosive devices themselves, the detailed plans for future attacks. Her defense attorney's attempts to argue diminished capacity due to an alleged delusional disorder were systematically undermined by the clear, undeniable evidence of her sophisticated planning, her technical proficiency, and her methodical execution of her terror plot. She was found guilty by a jury of her peers on all counts. At her sentencing, Principal Helen Miller gave a profoundly moving victim impact statement, describing the terror inflicted upon her students and staff and the lasting scars it would leave. Agent Jack Donovan also testified calmly and factually, outlining the extent of Evans's plot and the catastrophic potential of her actions. The judge, visibly shaken by the evidence presented, sentenced Patricia Evans to multiple consecutive life sentences in federal supermax prison without the possibility of parole, ensuring she would never again pose a threat to society. The Oak Haven Estates Homeowners Association, irrevocably shamed by its former president's monstrous actions and facing a barrage of potential civil liabilities, was formally and voluntarily disbanded by a near-unanimous vote of its horrified and guilt-stricken residents. Its considerable assets were liquidated, with a significant multi-million-dollar portion donated directly to the Harmony Center to fund long-term security enhancements and trauma recovery programs. The resolution of this horrifying case extended far beyond the quiet streets of Palmetto County. Agent Jack Donovan's comprehensive investigation, the sheer calculated audacity of Patricia Evans's terror plot, and the extreme vulnerability of her primary target, a school for special needs children, sent profound shockwaves through the highest levels of the national security apparatus. His detailed, unsparing after-action report, which he personally presented to the Director of National Intelligence and the Attorney General, highlighted critical systemic vulnerabilities in the security of so-called soft targets: schools, child care facilities, community centers, places of worship, and healthcare institutions across the nation. This report directly led to a series of urgent congressional hearings where Donovan provided compelling expert testimony. Ultimately, these hearings resulted in the bipartisan passage of landmark new federal legislation, the School Safety and Security Enhancement Act. This comprehensive act mandated regular, thorough security reviews for all public and private educational facilities, established substantial new federal funding streams, and grant programs for critical security upgrades, including enhanced perimeter controls, advanced surveillance systems, blast-resistant window films, and secure entry vestibules, and created standardized nationwide threat assessment and response protocols for law enforcement agencies when dealing with potential or active threats against schools. Agent Jack Donovan himself, recognized for his exemplary leadership and expertise, was subsequently tasked by the Attorney General with heading a newly formed National Interagency Task Force, dedicated to preventing, detecting, and responding to the growing threat of domestic extremism and targeted violence against educational institutions. The Harmony Center, though, forever bearing the invisible scars of the day, terror came to its doorstep, not only survived, but emerged stronger, a powerful symbol of resilience against hatred. The disputed strip of land, the catalyst for Patricia Evans's descent into madness, was formally and permanently deeded to the school by the Oak Haven municipal authorities. The sensory garden was meticulously rebuilt, more vibrant and beautiful than before, a living testament to the community's unwavering spirit. Principal Helen Miller, though she confessed to Donovan that she still had occasional nightmares, continued to lead her beloved school with unwavering courage, grace, and a renewed sense of purpose. Agent Jack Donovan, in the rare quiet moments between the relentless demands of his new national role, would sometimes find himself driving past the Harmony Center, often late at night, on his way home from his sparsely furnished office. He'd see the soft lights glowing within the new security cameras, silently watching, and sometimes, during the day, he'd catch the distant, joyful sounds of the children playing in their protected garden. Each time, he would feel a profound, if weary, sense of satisfaction, a quiet affirmation of his life's difficult mission. The darkness, he knew with an unshakable certainty, was always out there, insidious, inventive, and relentless. But so, too, he knew were the people, the ordinary and the extraordinary, willing to stand against it, to protect the innocent, to uphold the light. The positive, enduring impact of this terrible case was not just the bringing of a dangerous terrorist to justice, but the tangible, measurable increase in safety and security for millions of children and educators across the nation, a direct, if costly, consequence of the horror that had almost consumed one small, uniquely vulnerable school. And it served as a stark, indelible reminder that the most dangerous threats can often germinate in the most unexpected quarters, fueled by the most mundane of grievances, nurtured by isolation and obsession, and ultimately twisted by a flawed human mind into monstrous, unrecognizable ideologies. The fight, Jack Donovan knew, was never truly over. It simply changed its face, its name, its place. And he and those like him would always be there to meet it,